and the Israelis completely dominate the life of the Palestinian people.
Why don't Americans know what you have seen?
Americans don't want to know, and many Israelis don't want to know what is going on inside Palestine. It's a terrible human rights persecution that far transcends what any outsider would imagine. And there are powerful political forces in America that prevents any objective analysis of the problem in the Holy Land. I think it's accurate to say that not a single member of Congress with whom I'm familiar would possibly speak out and call for Israel to withdraw to their legal boundaries or to publicize the plight of the Palestinians, or even to call publicly and repeatedly for good faith peace talks. There hadn't been a day of peace talks now in more than 7 years. So this is a taboo subject, and I would say that if any member of Congress did speak out, as I've just described, they would probably not be back into Congress the next term.
Who are these forces that you're talking about?
We had several other people in the country, even among the Jews, the Zionists particularly, who were against anything that was to be done if they couldn't have the whole of Palestine and everything handed to them on a silver plate so they wouldn't have to do anything. It couldn't be done. We had to take it in small doses. You can't move 5 or 6 million people out of a country and fill it up with 5 or 6 million more and expect both sets of them to be pleased. We had all sorts of objections to everything that was done. Something had to be done. We went ahead and done it and had it done, and now it's working out. Eventually, I think we'll have them all satisfied, but it's going to take a great deal of time yet to get the job done.
F him. Trump slammed Netanyahu in interview and said the Israeli Prime Minister did not want to make peace. In an interview with Axios' Barak Ravid, Trump added that in his view, Netanyahu did not want to make peace in the Middle East.
Both sides to make a deal have to want to make it. First thing you have to ask, do they both want to make it? I have a real question as to whether or not both sides wants to make it. I have a real question as to one side in particular, whether or not they want to make it. I think one side actually would like a deal, and I think the other one maybe doesn't want a deal. But a lot will have to do with Israel.
I still like BB. But I also like loyalty, Trump told Ravid. The first person to congratulate Biden was BB. And not only did he congratulate him, he did it on tape. I haven't spoken to him since, Trump added. F him.
And after meeting with Bibi for 3 minutes, I looked at him and said, "You don't want to make a deal, do you?" And he said, "Well, and the fact is, I don't think Bibi ever wanted to make a deal.
Why?
I thought the Palestinians were impossible, and the Israelis would do anything to make peace and a deal. I found that not to be true. I think one side actually would like a deal, and I think the other one maybe doesn't want a deal. But a lot will have to do with Israel and whether or not Israel wants to make the deal. I thought he wanted to make a deal more than Netanyahu. And I will be honest, I had a great meeting with him, Abbas. And it was almost like a father. I mean, he was so nice. Couldn't have been nicer.
Mahmoud Abbas is the president of the Palestinian Authority, the governing body that exercises partial control over the West Bank. Abbas is a member of the Fatah Party, a group that has had ongoing conflict.
I was wrong about Israel. I apologized. Then President Carter gave me a lesson in grace. Carter owed me nothing, yet gave me a sense there is a capacity within us all for unconditional love. In the fall of 2015, with the leaves in Atlanta fading to a warm golden glow, I started doing my annual inventory of who I needed to apologize to. It was nearly Rosh Hashanah, and somehow my attention drifted to President Carter. 10 years prior, the Carter Center reached out to me to join their board of counselors. I was deeply moved by the work President Carter was doing for public health in Africa. Then in 2006, Carter published his now famous book Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid. I was troubled by the title and by numerous passages that were very uncomfortable and disturbing to read. While I was increasingly frustrated by Israel's occupation of the West Bank, I was angry that the president had roiled the diplomatic waters with his controversial book. I led 15 members of the board of counselors to resign. I was not happy about this public break from the president, but I felt that even my left-of-center sensibilities had been betrayed. I listened to his explanations. He wasn't calling Israel an apartheid state, he said, but warning that Israel was moving toward this state of affairs by its ongoing occupation of the West Bank. At the time, I wasn't convinced. But in the intervening years, I realized that he was likely right. And so, I penned a letter to him. It spoke of the high holidays and my own personal admissions. I wrote about how the shofar was sounded as a means of awakening our spirits. I wrote that, as of late, I had started to view Israel's occupation of the Palestinians as something that started in 1967 as an accident, but was now becoming an enterprise with colonial intentions. I sent my letter to Carter with no expectations. I was surprised when, a week later, I received a note from the president in reply. Former President Jimmy Carter's handwritten response to the author's letter. It reads, "Steve, you have no reason to apologize, but I accept your wonderful letter as you obviously intended. I sympathize and understand the feelings of my many friends who reacted as you did. Best wishes, Jimmy Carter. P.S. You would be welcome back at the Carter Center. J.C. Courtesy of Steve Berman." I shared the exchange with my family and a few friends and filed the letter away where it sat for the past 8 years. When the president's family announced that the president had entered hospice care, I felt a sadness that accompanies such news. Before it is too late, American Jews should apologize to Jimmy Carter and thank him for everything he has done for us and the world. Deep ties to Israel. My relationship with Israel started in 1965, when I was 10 years old. My parents took our family of 3 young boys to Haifa to spend a year, while my father took a sabbatical leave. That year led to summers on a kibbutz, university year programs, and eventually 2 more years in the country with my wife. All of our children created similar relationships with Israel. One daughter lived there for over 15 years and gave birth to 3 of our grandchildren there. My family is wound up very tightly in the Zionist dream of Jewish redemption. I have seen rockets fall on my grandchildren's city of Tel Aviv, and I was living in Jerusalem in 1973 when the Yom Kippur War took place. I have lost friends in terror attacks. In the last 57 years, I have experienced the entire range of emotions when the image of Israel is conjured: fear, anger, bereavement, frustration, sadness, exhilaration, connectedness, and alienation. I watched Israel closely after my resignation from the board of the Carter Center. During that period, I traveled to the country at least 20 times. I came to realize that the Jewish state was indeed burying its head in the sand. Israel was not facing the demographic realities and was fast becoming a state that could not be both democratic and Jewish. During this time, as the startup nation revved its engines, the Israeli left seemed more consumed by espressos and stock options than with peace. The Israeli right would disingenuously speak about Abraham Accords and peace deals with nations thousands of miles away instead of any meaningful attempts to address the occupation taking place in its own backyard. The reasonable Israelis would demur, "It's complicated." The right-wing Israelis would proclaim, "There is nobody to talk to." And the left would say, "Waiter, another espresso please." In the meantime, I kept thinking about Carter's prediction that apartheid was in Israel's future if leadership kept ignoring the general direction of the country. Our last chance for teshuvah. Peter Bernard wrote recently that Jimmy Carter deserves an apology before he dies. As I read it, I thought of the millions of lives the president affected through his successful battle to eradicate 2 diseases on the African continent, his tireless promotion of Habitat for Humanity, and his campaign to support the growth of democracy. Perhaps Carter's most important achievement was the Camp David peace accord between Israel and Egypt. This peace treaty has endured for 44 years and spared thousands of lives on the Israeli-Egyptian border. It also saved hundreds of billions of dollars in military costs that the 2 countries would have needlessly spent. President Carter warned everyone in 2006 that we all had the choice of peace, not apartheid. Some have made deliberate choices on the matter of Israeli occupation. Some have walked in a stupor, blaming the other for their shortcomings. Others still blame the messenger for the message. In his response to my apology, Carter wrote a simple and touching message. "You have no reason to apologize, but I accept your wonderful letter as you obviously intended. I sympathize and understand the feelings of my many friends who reacted as you did. Best wishes, Jimmy Carter." I was shaken and inspired by his humility. Carter owed me nothing, yet gave me a sense there is a capacity within us all for unconditional love. To contact the author, email opinion@forward.com.